a gala event to enable a dialogue on the future of telecom technology. The third edition of ETTelecom, the 5G Congress, brought together stakeholders to deliberate and talk about the future of the fifth generation technology. The event saw interactive sessions with industry leaders putting forth their opinions and suggestions to usher India into the age of technological advancement.
We need to harness the tremendous power of disruptive 5G digital communications in order to leapfrog towards a brighter future. The Government of India has envisioned and shared its ambition of Digital India initiative to connect every single unconnected Indian citizen by providing internet data online services, access to all those who have until now not had either the social or the economic benefit that broadband access can provide. The 5G technology, with its enormous capabilities, will be impacting every area of industry. There is a need for a robust investment of industry in 5G innovation, startup, and creation of 5G products that can create India-specific patents.
5G is expected to transform the nature of technological advancement with participation of stakeholders from across sectors. Such events enable a platform for sharing of knowledge and best practices. The event outcomes could further facilitate the government in making comprehensive policy decisions. In this context, standardization is one of the key elements of our cooperation on ICT with India. I'm happy to share that the EU has been supporting a project to promote closer alignment between India and the EU on production and use of IC standards.
First, the imperatives. You're going to talk of connecting billions of devices. Do we have the capability right now? Can we carry that load right now? Do we have the technologies right now? How are we going to get there? Delivering that at a fraction of the cost. Because every use case that we talk about, I mean, I tried launching NB-IoT now 5 years ago in the Czech Republic. And I've shared this earlier in some forums, but hardly any uses happening in the first 3 years. And then therefore the whole use case falls apart, business case falls apart. Interestingly, she expects me to create a business case for 5G in this speech of mine right now, but there ain't any. We got to work this through, we got to create those, and we got to believe that that's the future and that'll pay back. But otherwise, if you start trying to look at it right now, got to create capacity, humongous amounts, but at a cost that's a fraction, and then the business case will add up, otherwise not. 5G, at least in India, all that I know of, and most of the world, except I think there's some exceptions in Korea, etc., is going to be NSA, not standalone, which means built on top of a 4G network, which means it's an imperative to get the 4G story right, which means you got to get the 4G networks across to the nook and corner and make them robust enough to be able to take this load.
What's the real meaning and the core nature of the technology as the 5G? I believe in today, the industry, we already have a lot of mutual understanding. First, 5G is the technology will hugely improve the spectrum efficiency. Briefly, as per our understanding, possible more than 20% times efficiency improvement than 4G. 5G is really change the customer of the operators from the 2C, the individual, to the 2B, to enterprise, to government, to vertical.
5G will change the world. I think you've heard this before. And I will not repeat the use cases that are bandied again and again, the same couple of use cases. But it will require a lot of ingenuity and a lot of innovation. Who would have thought 15 years ago what 4G has done to the world? The growth of ride sharing, the growth of food delivery, the growth of e-commerce. Some of these new businesses have all got created on the basis of 4G technology. And so ingenuity and enterprise will be needed to actually build a whole bunch of applications that can change the world, both on the consumer side and more importantly, on the enterprise side. manufacturing will become more productive, agriculture will become more productive. And so there is a need for a lot of ingenuity. We have an opportunity to reset this industry, and I would passionately advocate that this industry must be subjected to competition, because that is the only way the customer experience will improve. But at the same time, we must find ways to create an enabling environment which will allow this industry to meet the vision of Digital India.
After the keynote address by the CEO of Huawei, the leaders sat down for a fireside chat to talk about the road ahead for 5G technology in India.
So the state subject that you talked about is about primarily impacting us is the ROW part. It changes, one, the speed, two, the cost of doing fiber. Does it really change the overall cost of creating data, especially in today's 4G world, FTTH being different? On mobility world, not so much. So if I change it by 0.2 paise or 0.2 or 2 rupees on a 149, 199 rupees plan, is that really going to be perceptible and therefore become an incentive or disincentive? Really not.
Well, it's not just price, something else that could incentivize you to do.
I would love to be in that situation, frankly, because the industry ARPU used to be about 200 rupees 3-4 years ago, and that's down to about 100, 105 rupees. So, I mean, the pricing today in India is so absurdly low, 45 gigs of data and for 130 rupees with unlimited calling, that we will be welcoming of a situation where we get to a situation where the cost of business goes down and that can be transferred into customer benefit. I mean, for sure that must happen, but there are more immediate issues and pressing issues here.
So, Jay, in China, how is backhaul managed? Is it according to the province or the county to decide the right of way, or is there a central policy on how this would be handled?
I think in this part, actually, it's very hard for us to benchmark with China. If you talk about the backhaul, you talk about the fiber, you talk about tower, you talk about this one, it's totally different. You talk about the spectrum, it's totally different. When we are in India, we need to think about how to solve our problem. I always ask the one question in the industry, ask myself, ask my friend. Currently, operator, vendor, subscriber, government, who are happy in this industry now? Doing business easy or not easy? Always not easy, always challenge. But so many stakeholders who are happy now.
In 2024, 1.9 billion 5G subscriptions, we argue. That's, we say, then 22% of all the subscriptions. Traffic-wise, have a look down at the lower right-hand side, 5 times more traffic in total. The 22% 5G users, we say, amount to 35% of the load in 2024. That 35% is more than all of the traffic generated last year over the world. And for me, that's quite some insight. In only 5 years' time, 5G will deliver more than the traffic generated last year. Now, in India, what does it mean? Again, up till 24, we predict a CAGR of 11% in smartphone traffic. We predict 500 million smartphones to be added.
Delving on the need for security parameters, the next chat presented different aspects in this regard.
5G is now commercial, so my encouragement is make sure you drive your local process so that, I'd say, as quickly as possible, it can be for the benefit of the consumers and industries. Then it can certainly include a trial period, that's fine. You need to license the spectrum, that's fine.
How do you see this security as an issue? And being a DOT official, how do you address this challenge, if it is at all there in the market, the security challenge?
So primarily, whether it was your personal voice calls, your text messaging, or your videos, photo sharing, that was all there which was relating to the communications per se. Now what we are envisaging in the 5G, and that is where the real economic growth as well as the all development aspects are linked with, are that in the forthcoming technology, going to be the key in all the environments, 5G, it's not limited just to the communication devices. We all are very happy listening to the terminology like you will have the smart refrigerator, you will have the smart ACs, you will have a smart lift, smart parking. I think you can use the word smart, prefix it anywhere, that becomes the use case for the 5G. And I think that is the starting point for all of us as a security concern.
After the break, we see discussions moving into the technicalities and future implementation of 5G technology. ETTelecom, the 5G Congress, was a melting pot of ideas and suggestions. The first panel discussion discussed policy implementation and challenges that 5G faces in the Indian subcontinent.
It is not only the radio which is required for 5G. It is the end-to-end from radio to transport to core which is required for 5G, and that's where we are involved with. Now, on the trial side, yes, there has been some proposal which have been floated in the industry for the trial from DOT also.
We have seen when we have had a business model when service provider, telecom service provider was providing everything whatsoever is required. That was the game of the past. When we came near 2010 and 2012, some sort of modification has happened when we talked about the IP providers. And we say, okay, you will provide infrastructure, but we will provide the services. Initially, technology was allowing to provide infrastructure, service, applications, and everything was bundled. Now we are moving in an area where everything is not bundled, and they are going to be segregated.
The fundamental issue is saying is that, yes, we can talk and say what is the per unit price of per megahertz, but by any stretch of the imagination, do whatever you want to take. At the end of the day, the bidding, all right, for 20 years or whatever the time period is going to be on a revenue stream, right? On a discounted revenue stream that you're going to calculate. So you calculate it on that revenue stream, which is based on some understanding of the ARPU, right? So clearly, that is going to be the ultimate. And by using that metrics, you will notice that we are truly quite expensive with regard to this.
India has been the consuming nation for the different technology growths happen, typically in the cellular world, whether it's, say, 1G, 2G, 3G, or 4G. We had not really been the contributor to the technology. I think this is an opportunity for us, primarily on the two strengths we have. One is we know this is going to be the software-defined network and application-driven technology. We being the already known IT power country, it's an opportunity for us to use that skill set and make our own contributions, our own applications for the purpose of contributing to the 5G in a global manner and make our economy not dependent on the things happening outside.
5G is very, very critical for the 1 trillion digital economy or the 5 trillion economy that India needs to get there in a few years, so that it's inclusive in all respects. And that requires a lot of work, a lot of hard work of making sure that the 4G networks today get across to be ubiquitous across the nation. And again, joint initiatives between the government, industry, both at the center and state level and the local administration will go a long way. Right away, spoken about, the fact that the government is now talking about a broadband readiness index for the states is a fantastic move.
What I suggest, what we would suggest is, go for zero cost license fees till 2021 December. Beyond that, it's like free Coca-Cola. So give free Coca-Cola to everybody. Hundreds of people will start getting into this business. Yes, AGR पे जो आपका SUC charges हैं, USO fund charges हैं, anyways, if they get some revenue after 5G, they will also pay on that also because it is on AGR. But they will not have to pay anything upfront on the spectrum fees. This is how government can actually bring in the digital revolution.
If I talk in any 5G use case, the end-to-end user experience will be dictated from the user equipment all the way to the data center, which is hosting the content, and everything in between. When the massive amount of devices that will hit on the 5G, as I talked about earlier, and all new services, they will come. Each one will require a traffic engineered path. But can the current protocol support? They become too complex. Here the segment routing comes to our rescue.
If you're looking at networks, and you're looking at the applications, today's applications and tomorrow's applications very soon will need networks that is very low on latency, high on bandwidth, and therefore, when we're looking at 5G, perhaps the era is already here. It's really important at this point in time that the government looks at 3-4 areas as enablers. One is, of course, bring a high level of focus on the rollout of fiber, and that's not really about just the ROW, which is ease of business, but it's also to do with the procurement standards of fiber, the deployment standards of fiber, and the maintenance of fiber for 5G. The other aspect is, may it be from a licensing perspective or otherwise, really open up the market for other players to come in to roll out networks.
5G going forward, I think one of the biggest discussions which we have had as an industry together, and what I would like to start with is by exemplifying the biggest fact that 5G is not synonymous with spectrum. 5G is not synonymous with the new radio. 5G is not synonymous with only the access technology. I was looking at the last industry numbers. I believe sometime around July, as an industry pan-India, we crossed 600 crore GBs of consumption just on the mobile network in a month. Jio takes the lion's share, 400 crores, but if you take the total number, we're talking about 600 crore GBs of consumption per month on a mobile broadband. And the growth at which the gradient at which this is growing is only going to stagger us going forward. And to make this real, to make this consumption real, to make this consumption reliable, to make this consumption latency agnostic, we need the core network to be distributed, we need the core network to be programmable, and that is a big, huge effort in a country like India.
I think with India's ever-growing demand of traffic, definitely India needs more bandwidth or more firepower because the amount of data we consume, average Indian consumes 12 to 14 GB a month. I think the spectrums we have on our 4G is not enough, so we'll need a newer technology and a larger chunk of spectrum to service this. I think device is very important. Today the devices which are available are $1,000. How many devices of $1,000 sell in India? Very less. An Indian consumer wants a device which is anything close to $100 to $200, $300. Even if you take a $300 4G phone today, the market share of that $300 phone is very less compared to the rest of the phones which are sub 300. So we really need to get the device guys to help us to get a sub $300 phone of 5G available in India so that 5G can become a technology of masses. While this is on the consumer side, on the CP side or on the modem side, we also will have to get 5G modems at a cheaper chipset cost so that we can really massify our digital India drive using the 5G. I think we cannot undermine and emphasize that enough.
As the day progressed, the discussions threw light on the technical aspects that needed to be employed. This panel delved on the kind of network architecture required to make 5G a reality.
There is a need to work out on ground to have a partnership with multiple stakeholders. The industry need to find the way how to do a partnership with those kind of partnership. Those things may be study case.
Another thing we learned this morning, and which I believe we all agree to, is anything that has worked in Europe and the Western world may not be applicable for India, which is also true, right? So I think once we get the technology, we start to evaluate and see how we can use it. And I see a lot of potential. So, the use cases have already been mentioned, but I still feel mobile broadband is something we shouldn't forget.
Looking at the way 5G capabilities are going to evolve, high resolution video surveillance, these will be some of the immediate use cases. And in mid to long term, the use cases could be telemedicine or teleoperated tractor, for agriculture and so on. But another key aspect that I want to share is that 5G with its capabilities like high throughput and low latency capabilities, it will enable a different consumption model. We can think of it like a cloud-based consumption model or a utility-based consumption model.
I personally feel that node of fiberization is required, not only in the cities, even the rural. Otherwise, it is going to have a digital divide is going to happen because of this 5G. All the operators, as the other speaker has mentioned, that how it is going to be, profitable. Nobody is going to just run for charity all these services if there are no returns. So we should not spoil the ecosystem by doing this. When it comes to the network architecture, not only fiber, which are already sharing it, even the active infrastructure sharing also should happen. I'm sure that Mr. Kishore Babu is going to talk about the government's viewpoints.
As an outsider and not a deployer, not a network provider, when we looked at, there are 4 key specific areas emerging and becoming more clearer and clearer. First and foremost, what we need in terms of 5G or in case of 5G is investments. Investments with a lot of questions about how quickly we are going to get returns. And the second thing is about collaboration. The kind of 5G events are happening, application development, user development, technology engagement, different industries coming together. And third one is about scale. And what kind of scale we are going to create, because when you look at the way we deployed in 3G, 4G, BTS, when we think about a scenario where we're 200 meters we are going to a BTS, perhaps scale is something what we are going to look at. And last, but very, very important one is about sustainable planning.
The final panel sat down to discuss the importance of local R&D in the quest to make 5G technology a success.
In the case of when you talk about 5G and all, we are very focused in enabling smart or intelligent connectivity, which is a combination of network, which can be 2G, 4G or 5G or whatever connectivity you have. The other aspect is open telco. So we believe in open telco, opening up APIs into our network. We also believe in bringing our forte in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And people might wonder, what is telco doing in artificial intelligence and machine learning? We actually process lots of data every day to drive our own business. And we want to bring that out to people.
SDOs always run with a very firm set of rules on how to develop standards. So we have a rule book too. And if you go to our website, you'll find our document called the RNR, the Rules and Regulations book. Standards is about studying Indian requirements. So we've been laggards in adoption of technology. 2G, 3G, 4G have been the era of us embracing technology which is already 5 to 10 years mature.
While we are moving to 5G, I think I want to also share that there is a lot of restrictiveness that we have today. To give you some background, in the Hector, for example, in the connected car, there's an embedded SIM, which is the SIM is part of the car body. But now in that SIM, for private APN, we have limitations to having only 2 IP addresses. So while connected mobility actually means that the car is a platform and you have a lifetime of services being offered. So entrepreneurs, startups can bring in, work on technologies, work on some innovative ways, whether it's services or user experiences. But then there are these restrictiveness that kind of limits us.
If you're looking to rural area, you have 2G. And what we are doing, for example, in the transport and logistic, taking care of expensive goods, which are carrying across the country, and it works wonderful in urban area. You can use the 4G approach, wonderful services. It also has to work in the rural areas. Right. So, and for this, for example, we are developing devices and services on top of this, which are also working on the basic services in these rural areas. That means it works there on 2G and with additional services in the 4G area. Right.
"5G is going to be the future, and as said, India is going to be an important player in this regard. These discussions will pave the way for various stakeholders to understand and implement the necessary steps to create a 5G-enabled world."